We don't need this video, or we do need this video?
It's up to you if you want it to see you or not.
Okay. I guess that's not that important, and it would be an awkward angle. No, that's standing, all right. Okay. So it'll just be no people, just PowerPoint for the Zoom. Yeah. Yeah. Right. This time we need to remember to restate the question. Okay. What am I doing here?
So I just want to make sure that your mic is working as well.
Okay. So what do I do? Do this? Says computer audio test. Hello, hello.
I can hear something. So blue snowball.
And then so the meeting is started? Yes. And it's recording?
Yes.
Where do you see it?
So I see it says stop share and pause share. Let me see. Did you press one?
It says pause recording or stop recording, which seems to imply it is recording.
Yeah, so it usually will be red and then this will be green when you're connected. Ours was used to be on. Now it's off. That is the last time. We're getting there. So, what time is your session over? We'll come and pick up.
Oh, okay. It's over 4.
Okay, I'll have somebody come and get it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Welcome everybody. So is everyone in fact? There we go. Kind of cheap. I think that door automatically locks, so if you just hear somebody knocking on it, we just be aware. Or yeah, maybe there's a little. Oh, okay. If the noise gets irritating, we'll start again. Okay, well, welcome to the information session on the University Grants Academy. My name is Amy Dendradi. I'm the director of the University Grants Academy. And
I'm Gilles Wheeler, the Associate Dean of Research in the Office of Research.
so we're very pleased to be able to offer the University Grants Academy for this 3rd year. Each year we learn something new and we change a little bit what we're doing so that hopefully it gets better and better every year. I'm going to go through a review of what's involved and how to apply, and then there should be plenty of time for questions after. Okay, so the funding for the University Grants Academy comes from the Provost's office, what has been called the Infusion Fund. Some of those dollars have gone direct to colleges to distribute and allocate as they see fit. Some remain centrally, and it's from that pot of money that the funding for the University Grants Academy comes. And what the UGA is an intensive, essentially year-long experience for a select group of faculty, designed to take them through the process of applying for a substantial external grant, to submit a grant proposal for an external grant. And we did a pilot initially in CASA, my college, and then it's been offered at the university since academic year 56. We're going to go through the details and the application process, but more if you want a refresher on the, there's a website on the, there's a link to it from the Office of Research website. So when we were developing this, we tried to be very thoughtful about what are the elements that somebody would need to have a good chance of completing an entire competitive external grant proposal. And one of the things we know about doing something like that is that it's very time intensive. So one of the fundamental benefits of being in the University Grants Academy is that it involves a 0.2 or 3 weighted teaching unit released for the spring semester. And the idea is that the faculty member participants would use that time to devote to the drafting of the external grant proposal and participating in the UGA. Part of the UGA is the fall grant writing series. It's actually open to the entire campus community. We've had the first one already. They're recorded so that people can catch up afterwards. But basically, they take you through, or anybody who attends, the process, the steps involved in creating a grant proposal. So they're a good preliminary to the actual spring experience, but also they would help you, if you're interested in participating, in preparing your application, because the application involves submitting drafts of some of the elements that go into an external grant proposal, which you would learn how to do in the fall workshop series. So that's one of the elements. In the spring, in addition to the assigned time, there's also a program that's designed to help you do this. It includes mentoring, technical support from campus experts and successful SJSU grant writers. Another component that has been very valuable is that when participants have completed a proposal draft, we send it out for external review. So we ask all the participants to identify a senior scholar in their discipline who's not here at San Jose State, probably an expert right in your area of interest, may not be right here at San Jose State, right? They're going to be somewhere else. You're looking for somebody who has a lot of disciplinary and grant writing expertise. And we reach out to them and ask them if they would provide a critical review of your grant proposal in exchange for nominal compensation. Most people are happy to do this. And so you can get some very nice critical feedback on your proposal. And then we're adding this year a couple of elements. One is a $500 submission incentive. So if you actually complete and submit your external grant proposal by the first window for such a submission for your RFP that occurs after the end of the UGA, then you are eligible to receive the $500 in research funds. So they would be funds that you could use to invest in your research or scholarship. So what that means is if you're applying to an NSF grant, but its submission window is in September, then you go through the UGA, complete your proposal draft, and submit it in September, even though that's not really that close to May. That's the first open window for that submission, and then you qualify for the $500 submission incentive. Does that make sense? So it could even be later than that. It just has to be the first available window after the end of the UGA. So if the window's in April, you don't have to submit in April because you're probably not going to be done. So you want to wait till the next. A lot of times these funders have maybe quarterly windows, or maybe it's even an annual submission window, whenever it is. The first one, that's when you need to submit.
If it's a rolling submission, that's not a call this one that such as a grant unit, if they're just going to roll it for a year. They said when they get enough in a particular area, they'll put a review committee together and submit it.
Well, you'd probably be wise then to submit it as soon as you can after it's completed. Right? I mean, we can't guarantee you'll get done in time to be in the competitive pool.
Oh, okay.
So then the other thing we're doing is tweaking slightly the program structure to support the completion of the proposal. So what we've done in prior years is we have a monthly, what we call a consultation session, where we bring together campus experts and faculty have the opportunity to ask any questions of people who know how to help them move forward on their grant proposal. And then we also had weekly writing sessions. Any week we didn't meet in a consulting session that were intended to help faculty structure their time, to ensure they spent time every week working on the proposal, getting it done. We're going to change that a little bit this year, and we're going to have individual or small group coaching. So you'll have a small group and kind of a coach who will be designated to help support you through the process. So rather than forcing you to write at a particular time every week, you'll have some one-on-one sort of support and help to move through. We also break the proposal down into separate pieces. So there's the budget and budget justification, there's the narrative, there's the submission package, there's all these different pieces, and those become assignments that have due dates throughout the semester. And that's, again, not to make it very rigid, but just to create a structure that helps you actually get through. Okay, so first, the fall workshops, they're sort of what we call progressive in that they build on each other. So the first workshop we had was on creating a one-page or two-page proposal summary that's very useful to have as you think about finding collaborators or funders or reaching out to program officers, things like that. You want to have something in hand, one that gets your ideas down on paper, but then also allows you to communicate with others about your ideas. So we will have the recording available if you'd like to have that, and you can get that recording by emailing Dr. Mueller. They're open to the campus community. You don't have to sit there and attend them in person, but you will probably want to view them if you want to put together the strongest proposal for the UGA, because the application reflects what we cover in the workshops.
I'm sorry, I have a question. So where online is the list of workshops? Because I didn't get an email about it until the second one. So I want to make sure that I don't.
If you go on the Office of Research, so you go sjsu.edu/research, then you look at the tab funding, and there is a funding support. And if you click on the funding support subsection, you will get the information about the different workshops. And for the UGA, the same tab under funding, you go under funding opportunities, and you will get all the information about the UGA.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the way the workshops are structured, they're 2 hours. They're in here. It's pretty crowded, so get here early. You spend the first hour sort of learning about whatever the step is and how to do it. And then the second hour, we really encourage you to stay and actually complete or at least begin a draft of that first piece, whatever it is. So next workshop's going to be on budgets and budget justifications. So it's a great chance to draft your budget, right? Well, there's experts in the room who can answer questions you might have about how to do it. Totally sensible to make use of that time, even though you might have an initial reluctance to sit in a room with other people at a predetermined time to do it. It's time you've already built into your schedule, you might as well make the use of it. And who we have in the room that's sort of giving the information are our partners from our university auxiliaries that help with and support grant writing on campus. And that's the Research Foundation. And they're the campus auxiliary that submits federal funders to federal funders. And so they know all about that side. And then we also have representatives from the Tower Foundation, which is housed in University Advancement. And they're the experts on private funders, foundations, and corporations. So they have that perspective that they bring. And then, of course, we have Dr. Jill Mueller, and sometimes we have faculty mentors who've gone through the process before and can bring that perspective. And then another opportunity that these workshops provide for you, if you choose to take advantage of it, is that if you do draft something, let's say you go to the budget workshop and you draft a budget and a budget justification, and you'd like to get some feedback on it before you submit to the UGA as part of your application package, you can submit that to Dr. Mueller, who will either review it himself or find an appropriate expert on campus that can give you some critical feedback. So why not? That's it's not always fun to get critical feedback, but it's incredibly useful. So I urge you to take advantage of that as well.
Will critical feedback be available to those who say missed the first one and then like caught up? We still email you?
It's fine.
You'd be surprised that not that many people take advantage of this opportunity
I would say
for the
that,
critical feedback.
I would say that as long as you want feedback, you can always contact the Office of Research. It doesn't matter if it's related to the UGA or another proposal. We are here to help, and we will work with any of you who may have an interest. So don't think it's only because we have the UGA or we attended the workshop. But if you have any questions or you want something back there, just let us know.
If it's getting, I would say if it's getting close to the UGA application deadline and you're wanting feedback, you might put that in the
Yes.
heading of the email that you send so that you can prioritize that over.
And keep in mind that you also need a timeline, meaning that if you send it and you said, oh, I need it in 3 hours, you also have other duties. So just keep in mind that because the reason why I mentioned that, recently I had one for a few hours. So if someone is not available, it's a challenging also.
So here's the workshop information. The budget, as I said, is coming up on October 2nd, and then drafting the narrative component late October. And, this one actually comes after the deadline for the UGA. And that's because this year we decided not to include in the application information about applicants' thoughts about potential funders. It's part of what we do in the UGA. There's a lot of information about how to find a funder. And of course, this is a good opportunity too. And also it just often turned out that people's ideas at the very beginning didn't actually align with where they ended up going for funding. So it wasn't very informative anyway. So this is still important. You should still attend it for sure. Even if you're not interested in the UGA, it's a really good set of tools to know how you go about searching for external funding.
And that's good.
So you don't have to have identified a external funder before, like what, it's not for a specific proposal. Like we don't have to say this is a particular NSF column going for.
You don't have to, but if you have done that thinking already and you're already pretty sure that's your funder, what we will be interested in seeing, and Jill, you can explicate a little bit if it makes sense, is that you have a well thought through idea. So, you know, sometimes what we found is people had said, oh, NSF's my funder, but it wasn't actually a good fit. So the more thinking you've done, the more advanced work you've done to identify a funder, that's great. But it's just not a critical, it's not something we ask for in the application. It's not required.
One thing I also want to mention about the workshops, if you go on the web page that I mentioned, you can RSVP, and by doing that, we can send you in advance the material for that day, because without your contact information, in the case, that would be helpful for you too.
Okay, consulting sessions, just a little bit more about those. Those are not for the campus community. They're just for those accepted into the University Grants Academy. In past years, we've had between 20 and 25 faculty members participate. You know, we really just don't know. It depends on the applicant pool and the strength of the application. We don't know how many, but that might be a reasonable number to think about that would be involved this year. We use Canvas as a way to collect the components of the application as they're being developed and to communicate. And in those consultation sessions, we really use San Jose State mentors, so people who have, from a variety of different colleges, who have successful major grant experience, come and talk about, you know, how they did it, what their suggestions are, what they wish they knew when they were beginning their first major grant proposal, things like that. So like we said, we've had 2 years, and I will give you the data we have about success and how you might measure that. We've had approximately 80% of participants from both years complete a grant proposal. So we thought that was good. And the first year in academic year 15-16, we had at least 3/4 of those folks submit their proposal formally through one of our auxiliaries for funding. Because of the submission windows being staggered, we haven't had everybody have an opportunity from last year's group to submit. So far, about 1/4, and that's a typo. 16 have pending submission windows, so they're just waiting, and then they'll be submitting over the year. In terms of learning, participants report that the experience significantly improved their capacity to write a grant and submit one. It was a 4-point scale, and on average, they felt that they went up by about a point in terms of knowing how to locate a funder, draft a budget, write a narrative, submit, and contact the program officer for a funder. They also found it very valuable when we asked them what they thought of it, how they experienced it. It's a little small for you maybe to see, maybe not. This is from 15-16 participants, and this is from 16-17 participants. The yellow on the right, you can see they really valued it a lot as something that added to their knowledge base about grant writing. One of the things they found useful was the accountability mechanisms, which, as a couple of people here point out, were sometimes inconvenient. And a lot of times at the outset, they felt like it was kind of a pain and a little intrusive to have it be so structured and have assignments and things like that. But they often ended up saying, you know, I was kind of not so into all that structure at the beginning, but by the end, I don't think I would have made it through if you hadn't structured it that way. I don't think I would have gotten it done. So, so we keep that, even though people are a little inconvenienced by it, because it's very, very hard when you have a deadline that's only, it's just you that's going to be disappointed if you don't meet it, right? So we try to create a structure that helps you make sure you submit that. Okay. We have made some changes this year because one of the outcomes that you see we haven't put up here is the percentage of hits. So we've had a lower percentage of people actually succeeding with that first grant proposal than we would like. But everybody who submitted their proposal are new grant writers. So it's not like you really expect a high hit rate. Success at grant writing is something you get better and better and better at every time you submit and don't succeed. You often get feedback and you learn about where's my weaknesses. But we have changed some of the ways we're structuring things because we'd like that to go up. We'd like to have a higher hit rate for even our first time grant writers. So the coaching model should allow a little bit more individualized feedback in the development of the proposal. So we're hoping that those come out a little bit stronger and more competitive for the first submission. So here's the requirements. Participants need to either attend all the fall grant development workshops or view them all, because we're not going to just replay how to do this in the spring. How to do it is in the fall, and the spring is really about coaching and getting you through the writing. You need to be sure that your chair will release you for a point 2 in the spring. So that's something you'll need to check with them. Sometimes chairs are not able to do that, even if they really support the idea of it. They may not be able to have anybody else who can teach a certain class.
I have a question about this. You know, being my first year, I have a 0.4 automatic. So that would mean that I might not be teaching a course additional, you know, one less course. Because I see it very difficult to happen. You know, if the department is small.
Yeah, the department is small. It might be very difficult for them to release you, but technically, right, you need to be in the UGA.
Yeah.
You need to be able to get that point 2 authorized. However, the UGA is great. I think it's a wonderful experience. And essentially all the same resources exist on campus for everybody anyway, right? The fall workshops, the Research Foundation, the Tower Foundation, the Office of Research. There's a lot of groups and people on campus who are here to help grant writers succeed. What the UGA is structure, you know, it structures and introduces you to that, but it all's here anyway. So even if you're not able to get that release from your chair, you could work with Gilles kind of independently and say, you know, what are my next steps? Can we meet again in a month? Whatever it is to structure your own process.
And if I may add, for each of you may have a different situation, but related to your questions, if you want, we can discuss it further together, because I need to learn a little more about a few aspects and ask you questions, because in the past there were some possibilities to work with a chair and a dean. But what's important, and what Amy said, the UGA, the point 2 assigned time, can only be taken in the spring of 2018. That's for sure. But there are a few things that we can discuss, and depending on your situation, I may be able to provide some suggestions that you can run by your chair. And
was there another question about the point 2? Okay. The third requirement is that participants to the UGA commit to completing and submitting an external grant proposal within the next academic term. The university is granting a release of 3 weighted teaching units, and the expectation is that time will be devoted then, instead of to teaching, to this work, and that there will be something to show for it at the end of the term. So that's an expectation that we want every participant to take very seriously. I wonder if this is the place where we should mention. Yes. So in addition, one thing to be aware of is that they're setting some accountability measures in this requirement now, such that if you were a participant in the UGA but didn't get a proposal done and didn't submit it to your targeted funder by the first open submission window, you would not be eligible for further risk of resources from the university for 3 years, or until you submit that proposal, whichever comes first. So it is a serious accountability element that we've built in this year. But if what you want to do is submit a grant proposal, then that's great. It's just one more thing to encourage you to actually get it done. And then lastly, we ask for engaged participation in the UGA consulting sessions and any related activities. So we're not, this is what we think of as a developmental opportunity. It's to help you develop as a scholar and a researcher and a grant writer. And we're not looking for people who just want point 2 and then are going to take it and run and do their own thing. That's not, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just not what we've built this program to support. It's for people who really want to dive in, engage with others, and be part of a community that's learning how to grant. Okay, so eligibility. This is an opportunity that's only for tenure track faculty members. And it's only for those faculty members related to what I just said who have not yet received a major external grant. Now, what is a major external grant? That varies by discipline. So if you're in science and people are getting NSF and NIH grants, that's going to be bigger than maybe if you're in humanities and arts, and grants tend to be lower. So you need to use your judgment, talk to your chairs, whatever it is. But if you've gotten some major grants, this is probably not the right program for you. You already know how to do it. You might need some introductions into our auxiliaries and our systems and things, but you don't need the rich support that this program provides.
If I may add something, is that if you have submitted a grant proposal to, for example, NSF, NIH, and you weren't funded, and you don't have any other major funding at the time, you are still eligible to apply, because you could use this grant. And in this case, well, you will have to provide in the application also the reviews that you have received, but that could be also something that you are working on a resubmission to a program that you targeted recently or in the past. Since that's some of the steps.
Oh, we did have it here. Applicants won't be eligible for further internal risk opportunities unless the grant proposals are submitted or for 3 years, whichever. So now if you've gotten, how many of you are first year, brand new. Okay, for those of you who aren't brand new, if you've gotten internal RISCA grants from the university, that's perfect. Then you're just in the right spot because that shows that you're developing a RISCA agenda and you've got some pilot data and you're in a really good spot to apply for larger funds.
I have a question. So about the second bullet point, so like are EU grants, so are they training grants or do you consider them like training grants or research grants? Undergraduate experience.
Those count.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
there's quite a few people going for those.
So those are not like those training grants or curriculum development.
Because they're really built around research experiences,
Uh-huh.
right? Based
Okay.
on the research agenda of the faculty member.
Okay.
Okay, so to apply, and note that these will not be due till early November. Got plenty of time to get these together. So there's an application form. You want to make sure your CV is up to date because that's something we'll want to see. You're going to draft a budget and a budget proposal, budget justification for the project you want to get funding for. So like what you would ultimately put into the grant proposal, only we totally understand it's a draft and maybe haven't done something like that before. So you want to make sure that you view or attend the budget development workshop and then have that be what you work on in that workshop or subsequently to submit for this. Similarly, we ask for a piece of the proposal narrative that you would ultimately be developing and submitting to the funder. In particular, we want to know more about what you're going to do, what your methods are, what you're proposing. And that's tricky, right? Because you're probably in the very beginning stages of thinking through what you'd like to do, but over the next couple of months, you want to be thinking about that and coming up with something appropriate for your project. What we're hoping to do, what was one of the things we learned last year is that people had not done much of that thinking yet before the beginning of the spring semester. And they were having to do all that thinking and find the funder and submit. And it was just too much. So they do a lot of thinking, but often what happens when you do a lot of thinking is that you realize, oh, oops, I'm going in the wrong direction. I have to restart, right? I was coming at it from the wrong angle. I was targeting the wrong funder. I hadn't thought through that I wouldn't be able to do this X piece of it. And then they had to start over, and then they really didn't have enough time. So we're wanting you to get engaged with that thinking process, thinking through your project, work out some of those issues before the spring semester starts. That's our hope. So asking you to do a little bit more work beforehand. So mostly methods and scope, and then just 1 to 2 pages sort of introducing the problem or issue. So again, the application and details are on the UGA website at the Office of Research. In terms of the criteria that we're looking at in order to determine who would be a good fit and who to accept into the UGA, obviously you want a complete application. We're going to be looking for the strength of what you submit, how strong it is, how well done it is, how sensible an idea it is, if it's has a good chance for funding according to this perspective of the review committee, which will consist of members from the RISCA Advisory Council at the university. One thing we look at is evidence of your ability to complete a similar project, complete a project like this within the time frame. So that might be completed articles and projects on your CV, some kind of evidence to show you can start something big and finish it and get it done. And then, as I already talked about, the fit of faculty interest and needs with the goals of the UGA. So are you in that right spot? Having just enough experience to be competitive for an external grant, but still needing the structure and support and information that the UGA would provide. Okay.
For the application package, so you said 5 to 6 pages on methods and then 1 to 2 pages introducing the issue or problem. Usually I would reverse those in like how I would lay out a proposal. Like, I guess what I'm asking is, so from the first workshop, you kind of talked about like the cover, you know,
Right.
of the narrative. That's that 1 to 2 pages, right?
Ah, I see.
That's
Not,
my
that's not the
interpretation.
1 to 2 pages that would be submitted with this.
Okay.
So that's really, that 1 to 2 pager distills your whole thing, right? You're gonna have your introduction, your methods, your everything in just 1 to 2 pages. The 1 to 2 pages here is really sort of an introduction that tells what is the problem or issue or information gap, why is it important, why is the funder, you know, what is its relevance to the funder priorities, and building a little bit of a case to your research question.
In a way, also to add, is why what do you propose is of interest to the members of your discipline, in a way the broader impact. And what is the novelty that you are bringing to the science that you are doing or the research? So that's a little to get this information within those 1 or 2 pages.
And the thing about the scope, the methods, what you're going to do, your project description, you know, it could be that's a bit of a stretch. Maybe come up even with five pages. But what I have heard over and over from funders and review committees is the place where people fall down in a grant proposal is in the detail provided in what they're going to do. And so we're just starting to urge people to really think that through. It's having a great or interesting idea is good, you got to have that, but you have to be able to know and articulate what are you going to do that's going to provide evidence that's meaningful.
And usually when you look at your big idea, you often have different sections of aims that you want to address. And for each of them, you have a few steps. This is where you can discuss about that and keep in mind often, how are you going to approach that? And what are you doing to do? And often what you need also to think is, if it doesn't work, do I have in a way a plan B? So those are the aspects that you can describe in these 5-6 pages to give some ideas about what you are thinking. Yep.
So is there any place in the application where you're doing a more formal introduction of the project and like what has happened previously in the literature? And
That's the 1 to 2 pages. You obviously can't do a full introduction, but you can just hit the high points.
okay, so it's kind of a condensed introduction of
Yes.
what's been done before, what you're building on, and why it's going to be interesting to those in the field.
Exactly.
And so, but you have it structured still so that it's after your specific aims, or does it
Oh,
not matter?
this is just because it was written that way, but if you look, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
This is just that we listed both of them. It should.
Oh yeah, you would put the
Oh, so the
introduction
bullet point
first.
is-
Right?
Just the bullet points, gotcha.
Confusing.
No, no.
Thank you.
So I have an extremely practical question and then an abstract question. The first extremely practical question is double spaced, 5 to 6 pages, 1 to 2 pages, or single spaced?
I think double spaced.
Double spaced.
I think we are not looking at that. So,
Oh.
so I think for us, what's more important is the content.
I tend to be pretty
No,
simple. I
exactly.
can squeeze some more words on the page. That helps.
I would say that, oh, sorry, I would say that as long as the review committee members can read your document, that's more important.
Okay.
Can't even remember if we said anything about that.
The second question is, so I'm working currently on developing a grant proposal with colleagues. Neither of them are eligible for the academy for different reasons. So that's why I'm here. But is there any way to support like them, or is there any like structure for them to like join in on the coaching sessions, like if they're available?
I'll give a response and then you edit it as needed. So really this is, the idea behind this is as a faculty development program. We're interested in helping you as a PI develop your skills in grant writing. If you're working with others on a collaborative proposal, that's great. but the experience and the resources here are about developing you.
Okay.
So it could be that we're still working out the final details of the coaching process and how that'll be, but I imagine that it might make sense for the coach to meet with your team or whatever, something like that. But with the intent being
That I do.
your development.
And I mean, that would be, we kind of look at it practically too. We're all teaching 4 classes next semester. We're not gonna be able to write a grant if one of us have some time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And again, this is the role of the Office of Research. If your team does have a dilemma or a question or is wondering something, you can just reach out to that office and they'll figure out a way to support you if the UGA doesn't turn out to be.
Okay.
So following up on her question, like, I was sort of under the impression that this had to be like a solo thing, but it's not.
Well, just given what I just said. So it is a solo in the sense that we're interested in your development as a PI.
Right, no, I'm
But
saying,
you
like,
could do a collaborative proposal. for
like
sure.
if I develop it and at the end submit it with even some more senior faculty, like get a better chance of acceptance maybe. Is that okay, I guess, or does it have to be?
So it depends what you say by that, because you just mentioned something that I think, and that's the point that I will mention, it's not by putting names of some people who have been successful. That
No,
you
no,
have
no,
a
I didn't mean
better
that.
chance,
I just-
so that's why I just want to address that. I think this would be the wrong way to approach a submission. But we know that people often, when you work in your research project or what we call research, depending on the college and what you are doing, so we use a research scholarship and creative activity, we know that most of the time, it's pretty rare that someone is doing everything by himself or herself. There will be collaborators at the university or somewhere else. That's fine. What Amy said is that the UGA is to develop, for instance, yourself, but it doesn't mean that you are not allowed to collaborate with other colleagues at San Jose State or somewhere.
Okay.
I have a related question. So say 2 people are working on proposal and they are both interested in participating in the workshop. So then can they apply at the same time? Or?
So like you and a colleague want to work on the same proposal and you both want to be in the UGA?
Yes.
My off the top thought is that why don't you think of 2 proposals? One can be the lead on one and one can be the lead on the other. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it will depend on really what each of you are doing in this, because if one is doing more than the other one, I would say that you should follow what Amy said.
So I'm thinking like a summer EU. So like clearly, so if one person does that, that would be too much work. If it's done by 2 people, so supervisor and 8 students also, so that is same project. It's really hard to split that up into 2 ideas.
Right. So like some of our UGA members last year worked a lot together, and in the first year, I see their names together on proposals going out all the time. So they each chose a particular proposal as their UGA proposal, but they were on each other's proposal, right? So if you and I were working on something, we could both be in the UGA, and you could be using as your UGA proposal the training grant, and I could be doing something else, but you could be the co-PI on mine, and I could be the co-PI on yours. Does that make sense?
So we should submit 2 different applications, but then we should indicate we are maybe we are both working on that proposal together. Or should we should let you know.
Well, one point about the training grants, here be careful because the priority will be given to WISCA grant proposal. And then what we are talking is that if you still have funding available and depending on the quality, training grants or program or curriculum development will be considered. So that's not the priority on the purpose of the UGA. So I just want to mention that.
But he had asked this question before about the RU. And the RU, is that a training grant, or do we consider that a RISCA grant? Because isn't that based on the faculty members' RISCA agenda?
So the REU is in fact, it's when you have students coming during the summer from other universities to work on different projects from faculty. So it's between the two. It's that's why it's so maybe let's talk a little more about your ideas and what could be done with your colleague to see what would be the best approach. Because it's better that we look at all the aspects before we leave you. Because I don't want to say yes or no directly without knowing all the information.
Sure.
So contact me and we can discuss more.
Okay.
Just one question on that. I was wondering, like, in this F grant, I was looking at it, sort of like, how do you promote STEM among students? And so they talk in the call, and we had a call today, but they say it's research as far as how do you get people engaged, or how do you develop this, make people learn. And I wasn't sure if that was falling under the outside, or if that was falling under considered like a training or curriculum development, because you're researching training sort of.
Who is the funder?
NSF.
So maybe if you can email me the RFP, so I
Okay.
can have a look and I can get back to you exactly about it.
Okay.
And,
Sure.
But I would say that in theory, if you are developing methods to learn how people are doing research or engage, it can be considered research in a way too, not
Right.
just a training. So that's the reason why by reading the RFP, I can have a better
Okay.
idea what they are asking for, and then we can discuss it.
Okay, sure, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Yeah.
I submitted a proposal for the internal risk before. Can you use that to modify it for this program if it was rejected before?
Sure, it was rejected and hopefully got a little bit of feedback. And certainly if the idea is one that can be, what's the word, like scaled up, right? So what you can do for $5,000 on an internal RISCA, that's not probably going to make it a substantial external grant to be eligible for this. So you want to aim for a significantly larger funder.
And even, I will say that even if we were funded, we could still use it because keep in mind those internal grants often are used for seed funding or to develop your ideas, to have the preliminary data that you can use when you go for external grant proposal. So even in this case, if you were funded, because what you would propose would be much more than what you plan to do with the 5K that you may have received. So that's something, in fact, we encourage people to apply to the internal grant opportunities so they can build their program or their ideas to show that what they want to do, they have some proof of concept that they can use in the external grant proposal.
What you can't do is use different funds to fund the same thing, right? If it's a $5,000 study and you got it funded from the internal program, then you wouldn't use it to apply for external funds for the same project. Okay, well, thank you for attending, and applications are in early November. Information on the Office of Research website. Gilles and I can hang out for a little while if you want to ask any questions after the workshop.
And otherwise, you can always contact us if you have other questions. We'll be pleased to address them as much as possible we can. And, yeah. Thank you for your time.